Hello, everybody. This is Doing the Ditch podcast brought to you by Waterman Media. We are lucky enough to be back. Captain Greg Parker on the phone with us right now for another episode of the podcast. Episode 2, actually, of the podcast. So we're certainly glad that you tuned in with us. And Captain Greg, we're certainly glad that you are here today.
Man, I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity. I know you guys got a busy schedule, man. I appreciate you fitting me in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Captain Greg, that trip is getting pretty close. What is it today? February the 11th. It's right around the corner, isn't it?
Well, it is, Greg. I guess we're like 6 weeks out at this point, more or less. And if everything holds together and and we hold together, then we're gonna try to launch on the 27th out of Norfolk.
Gotcha. Well, it's a good thing you're not launching tonight because it is literally about 30-mile-an-hour winds here in the Outer Banks with sideways rain. So hopefully the weather outlook is a little bit better for you when you get started. But Captain Greg, we wanted to talk. A lot of our listeners and a lot of our viewers have commented and messaged into the show talking about your itinerary. And there are a lot of curious listeners about, how you schedule a trip like this, how you even begin scheduling a trip like this from a holistic standpoint. And then two, what's your plans? Where are your planned stops? What's your itinerary looking like for the actual trip?
Well, when you're doing something like this on a skiff, you don't have the luxury of anchoring up and spending the night somewhere, especially late March or early April when you're talking about leaving Norfolk, Virginia. So you have to plan. Your entire trip is really based around two things. Number one, fuel, like we covered in the first episode. We've got 22 gallons of fuel, so we've got to take on fuel each day during the day, which will give us a chance to stretch our legs and then grab a bite somewhere. But the main planning, what makes it the best part of planning this thing is finding a place to call home at night. And again, with an open boat like this, you just don't have the luxury of stopping, dropping the hook, and curling up. But that's how it's got to be based. Everything is based around where you're going to spend the night and have a reputable marina you can tie it up.
Gotcha. Now, here's a question for you. You're going to have to stop at a number of marinas, obviously, in the entirety of the trip. Have you personally, of the marinas that you have planned, have you personally been to each one of these?
No, not to all of them. I would say that I have passed them in different trips up and down the ditch, and then there's going to be a bunch of them that I have not seen. But Jeff, Captain Jeff, is going with us. He's probably been into the other ones that I haven't. So a lot of what we're basing this on is personal experience with the area, with the marina, the reputable fuel that you can get there. I mean, a lot of people, tout the ethanol free and whatnot, but I've had to replace injectors on some engines due to what was supposed to be non-ethanol fuel. So you have to kind of put some local knowledge into play here when you're stopping as well. But no, I personally have not been in them, but I do look forward to touching base with the ones that Jeff has been in and I guess call them home for the night.
Sure. You better really trust Captain Jeff there because, like I said, there's no telling where you all could end up along that ICW. But to your point, Greg, talk about a little bit about, and you've mentioned it, about a skiff. Like you said, you can't just drop the anchor and go to sleep there. Well, I suppose you could, but it probably would be ill-advised. There's some particular planning that has to go in this because, correct me if I'm wrong, when you do make a stop, you're going to have somewhere, hopefully for food and lodging. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And the majority of the places we're going to be, and the plan that we've got in place is it's going to be a short taxi ride, and in a lot of cases you can actually walk. There are accommodations pretty close by, and normally if you've got accommodations, you've got food, so it kind of goes hand in hand. But one of the things about most of the marinas, everybody there is going to be super helpful and super they want to be a part of the trip in a sense. Every trip that comes through there, not just ours, but every cruiser that comes through, anybody that comes in to take on fuel or to stay for a day or two, or if you go further south, they're going down there and stay for several months. The majority of the people want to be a part of it, and they're just super nice folks. Majority of the places you go, so we'll be making calls, obviously, to reserve a slip, and the questions are going to be posed then. Is this particular motel still in operation there? What restaurants do you have on site? What do you have close by? So local knowledge always comes in handy, Greg. There's no question about that.
Gotcha, for sure. And correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, you plan to share at each one of your stops, you plan to share a little bit about the lodging that's offered and a little bit about the dining and maybe possibly even the entertainment in the area. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's part of the plan. I mean, there's you're right. A lot of people have called in and emailed and whatnot to ask about certain aspects of the trip as far as how we're going to report and demonstrate the day's travel and so forth. And yeah, part of the podcast each night, recapping the day, is certainly going to touch on where we fuel during the day and where we are obviously tied up for the night. And sure, there's a lot of free publicity that's going to be given out to a lot of restaurants and different places, and I'm all about that. I mean, this is a little something for everybody, and I want everybody to get a little something out of it.
Sure, absolutely. I don't know how many people or how many of our listeners know or don't know this, but correct me if I'm wrong. There's quite a few places, as far as these marinas. It wouldn't be out of the question, it could be a fairly easy trip, right? To take a boat down the ICW, stop at one of these places, have somewhere to rest your head at night, obviously, and then grab a bite to eat. That's what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, obviously coming out of Norfolk, you've got several marinas in the Norfolk area. So if someone is making a move from further north up the Chesapeake Bay or further, when you get into Norfolk, there's multiple places to call home, take on fuel, and provision your boat. But then after that, your next stop is going to be Coinjock, North Carolina, and the world-famous Coinjock Marina, and what was Midway Marina more or less across the ditch from it. Two famous places and have been a stopping point for cruisers for multiple decades. And it's places like that just really make the trip enjoyable. But the further south you go, the more plentiful the marinas become. And once you get, call it below Charleston, and you get through the Thunderbolt, Georgia area down to start making your way toward Fernandina Beach, Florida, then, of course, the entire state of Florida, as water-based as that peninsula is, the options are endless. So you have to, you've got plenty of options to stop in, and again, local knowledge is very, very helpful. There are a lot of publications that are out there. There are other podcasts and other bits of information to help you make a decision where to take on fuel or spend the night, or if you're in a transient slip for weeks, months at the time, where's the best per foot charge, so on and so forth. So there's so much available to someone that's doing the ditch that it's endless. It's really endless, and anybody can find a bad apple, I guess, and make a semi-bad decision, but there's so much available to you that you can't go wrong. In some cases, you just can't go wrong, but like I said, there's a bad apple everywhere you turn.
Sure. And I think that's one of the best parts, or one of the most exciting parts of this project for me, is that we're going to show people stops along the Intercoastal Waterway and what they have to offer, because, again, some of the most pretty and quaint and set in natural beauty towns and little coastal areas that you can possibly imagine, little hidden gems all along the ICW. So it's going to be really nice to recap every night with you, Captain Greg, and obviously Captain Jeff, talking about the trip itself, but also where you're resting your head tonight and where you're having some grub. So we're looking forward to that. Now, as far as doing the ditch trip, your actual trip, How many marinas do you anticipate stopping at?
Well, if the weather cooperates and there's no mechanical issues, we hope to do this in 10 days. 11 on the outside, and I'll get back to that in a moment. But you're going to have, like day one is Norfolk to Corn Jock. So in that case, it will only be one marina. But from that point forward, there will be a marina and a fuel stop during the day, and then one that night. So you're talking about a minimum of 2 a day after day one. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about 18, 19 different places that we're going to take on fuel and or tie up for the night.
Wow, that's honestly, that's more than I expected. So you can safely bet between 18, 20 marinas probably by the time this is all said and done in only 2 weeks, hopefully.
That's right. I mean,
wow.
And again, it's really based on the fact of the fuel that we have the capacity to hold. You don't want to get caught somewhere. I don't want to tap into the reserve we're going to have on board unless that's absolutely necessary. So yeah, we're going to get a chance to practice our docking skills quite a few times on this trip.
Sure. Which is take it from me as a fairly new boater, at least in the saltwater world. Experience docking is quite important. That's absolutely for sure. You talk about, and you always preface every time I have a question about the length of the trip. You always preface you're going to do your best, or weather permitting, or you're always kind of preface some of the challenges that you might face. What are some obstacles or things that you might run into that maybe prolong this trip longer than the anticipated 2 weeks?
Well, I hate to keep beating the dead horse here, but it is weather.
Yeah.
Considering the style of boat that we're on, a little bit of wind goes a long way when you're crossing a massive body of water, such as the Albemarle Sound or the lower Pamlico, mouth of the Neuse River, Cape Fear River. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities for a little bit of wind to cause havoc on a skiff. But that is first and foremost what could delay.
Sure.
But then as you really start making your way, and it becomes a more congested ditch, if you will, obviously when you're coming into the Isle of Palms area, Charleston, you get down that way, you've got a lot of stretches of no wake zones, and Florida is loaded with them. I mean, there's some areas that in the past have really surprised me to how hard you can run in what looks to be what I would consider a no wake zone, but it's free to run, and you're meeting sport fishermen and motor yachts that are steaming and throwing a wake. So you have to understand that, and that's the part where Jeff is still researching. So to be honest with you, you got weather, and you've definitely got no wake zones to slow you down. So if the weather cooperates on the front end, and we make our way through Florida, we could literally add a day to the trip because of no wake zones in Florida. And,
wow.
And that's fine. Don't get me wrong. We're going to be extremely respectful to all the communities that we go through. We're not going to create a stir, that's for sure.
Sure.
Just to stick to a schedule. And
gotcha.
you have to be respectful of everywhere you go, and you don't want to create a stir, that's for sure.
Captain Greg, what would let me play out a scenario for you, and then to feedback off your last response. Let me give you a scenario. What are you considering when you make dock, and let's say you're leaving at 6 a.m. the next morning? What are you looking at right before you leave to determine whether or not you're actually going to leave the marina?
Well, obviously, you're looking at the forecast 2 and 3 days ahead. That can change at the drop of a hat, as we all know. We've got handheld VHF, so we're going to be listening to the weather band for that area. But again, you have so much technology at your disposal. You can sit here and pull up a forecast and kind of be tracking a low pressure that might be coming through. The high pressure is going to bring a different kind of wind and so forth. But you'll basically make a go or no go decision. And if you know it's coming bad, and you really know she's going to get lumpy and it's going to blow, you can make the go or no go decision the night before. But to your point exactly, we'll be up early, there's no question, and we will look at the forecast again. We will check current weather, but the VHF is going to, with the weather band, that's going to really be a guide of sorts. So it'll be a combination of all the technology that's available, to be perfectly honest with you. And then a little common sense has got to kick in somewhere.
Sure.
I mean, you can press all the buttons and click all the things you want, but somewhere along the line, a little common sense has got to come into play.
Sure. And
again, on a skill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where it's going to be nice to have, well, your experience, but also Captain Jeff's experience. You guys probably have done it so much and so often that, even though it certainly will throw its share of challenges at you guys will know, hey, this is a no-go, or I think we can go ahead and push it. But like I said, I mean, you're going to be right in the elements on a skiff. There's no question there. But you talk a little bit about technology, and Jeff let us in on a pretty cool piece of technology that I'd like to mention here right now. Tell us a little bit about what Captain Jeff is bringing as far as the Garmin GPS. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is a Garmin product. You're right about that, and the website has a link to that. And Jeff has actually got a device that he will actually clip on the boat somewhere. Normally, he'll put it on his belt loop, and that's bouncing off the bird, and it basically gives people looking at it an opportunity to click on it, and it shows our exact position, the lat long, it shows the heading, it shows our current speed, and it leaves a trail. It leaves breadcrumbs, so you get, if someone is following this and, once they come home from work, they want to see what we did that day or where we went, it should be easy to go back, retrace it through our website, which is linking to the Garmin product. So it's going to give people almost a real time view if you're clicking on it as we're moving, as real time as it will allow, as a satellite delay will allow. But it will give somebody at the end of the day a chance to come back and as we're recapping the day, if they want to listen to the podcast and then go back to the website. They can simultaneously listen to where we went and then see it in a sense.
That's a pretty impressive piece of technology, and like I said, what a great tool or valuable tool for our listeners. They can actually see your track, so theoretically they could recreate parts or pieces of it. I think that's really, really neat, and like I said, that's an incredible product that we'll try to showcase and promote. And like I said, on doingtheditch.com, you can see exactly where Greg and Jeff go from day to day, and you can see the trip as a whole. So it's pretty, like you said, Greg, a pretty cool piece of technology. Well, Greg, we're almost at time. Any parting words, any parting thoughts before we send it off?
Well, Grady, number one, thanks again for having me. I appreciate your time. Like I said, I know you guys are up to your eyes there with various projects, but I appreciate you giving me a chance to communicate this. And as we get closer, we will certainly increase the podcast and start putting a little more content on there. And once Four Sons Marine finishes the boat and we get it rigged, then obviously we're going to have something to chat about there and give the world a chance to take a peek at that. But no, the main thing I want to reinforce, man, this whole trip has become themed with my thoughts about this and life in general is don't wait to live. Reach out and grab it all.
I love it, man. And yeah, I know our viewers can't wait. Four Sons Marina is building you a beautiful boat. I'm anxious to see it, and I'm anxious to, like I said, hear what you have to say about it. And we'll certainly, not only will we do a audio podcast about the boat, certainly, but we'll do also a YouTube video or some type of video. We'll put it together so you guys can see what the boat looks like. Greg, you can give us some insight on why you had the boat built the way you had it built. And like I said, we are certainly excited, and it's getting ever closer to the departure date. For Captain Greg Parker, my name is Grady Edwards of Waterman Media. Don't forget, visit www.doingtheditch.com. Again, doingtheditch.com. We are going to share everything on there. We're going to share our sponsors, our content, the podcast, and daily blog, and you can even get a hold of Captain Greg, Captain Jeff, or myself on doingtheditch.com. Additionally, our podcasts, you can listen to it or anywhere podcasts are heard, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Doing the Ditch podcast will be available and ready for you wherever you need it. Like I said, for Captain Greg, I'm Grady Edwards. Don't wait to live. Reach out and grab it all.